On this episode of Inside the Mind of a Hacker, guys, I have been asked a multiple amount of times on how on earth do I scan systems without being detected? And we're going to talk about that right now. In this episode, we're going to talk about scanning systems in stealth mode. Let's begin. So what I want to talk to you guys about today are a couple of things. One is obviously, when you scan networks or you scan systems in the real world, you're going to be detected either by the engineers or by firewalls or some sort of technical appliance, right? And most appliances right now are actually equipped with detecting either some sort of attack, whether it's a ping sweep on the network, and it's going to basically filter out your IP address and it's going to block you. And it's basically a roadblock for us as attackers coming into a network. So it's going to slow down our process, and that's something that we don't want. What we want to do is basically scan without being detected. And that's how, and right now is how we're going to go through that together. So basically, let's just start off with how it's going to work. So when we do idle scanning in the real world, there's a couple of things. One is we want to find and probe basically the zombie. So we want to use a zombie that will send out the request. We don't want to basically use our own identity on the network to send out requests. We want to basically spoof someone else and get them to send the request for us on our behalf, essentially. Then we want to send the spoof packets from that zombie, not from us. So any IP address that we send requests to will have our source IP address in that packet. And we basically don't want that system to know it's coming from us. Therefore, we basically find the zombie and we probe it. And then we spoof the packets, and then to finish off the connection is we probe it one more time, and I'm going to show you why that's so important right now. So let's just get a little bit familiar. What I'm going to do right now is we're going to walk through this a little bit together, and I'm going to walk through the process of how to do an idle scan in a real production network. So I'm just going to draw out a network down here. I'm going to make the screen a little bit bigger as we do this so you can see that. Okay. Let's just say we have basically an attacker out here, and he's an attacker that's, sitting here. Now, he's probably on the internal network, or it can be external somehow. And let's just say that we have, obviously, the corporate network way over here. And in our corporate network, we've got a couple of hosts. And for number's sake, let's say this is host A, that's host B, host C, and host D on this network. And let's just give this network an IP range so we can work with something. Is 10.10.0, and that's on a 24-bit network there as well. So I'm just going to give some IP addresses to these guys. Let's just say that this guy's on .20, .21, .22, .23. Now, and the attacker, let's just say he's sitting on 109 is what my hand wrote. So let's just go with 109. Now, in normal TCP three-way handshakes, what would ideally happen, right? So what would normally happen in a normal network connection, if I'm an attacker and I send out a TCP SYN request out to host A is going to obviously respond back to me. This is going to be a TCP SYN request on port 80. I'm going to send him and say, hey, Mr. Host A, guess what? I want to do a three-way handshake with you and I want to connect with you. Now, what would happen? How would host A respond to me? Now, if you're saying to me, Andrew, host A is going to respond back with a TCP SYN, whatever my handwriting was there. So it's going to send back with a TCP SYN ACK. And he's going to say, hey, you know what? I've got your request for port 80 that you want to connect with me, and I also want to connect with you if you want to connect with me. So he's going to send that back to me, and that's on port 80, obviously. Now, I can either, as an attacker, I can send an acknowledgement back, and I can finalize that request, or I can send a reset back, and then I can say, look, thanks, but no thanks, not interested. So depending on what we want to do on the network, we can send multiple things into the network, depending on, I guess, our objective of what we want to do. Now, let's just take this example as well. Let's just say we send the same TCP request out to host B. I'm going to send out a TCP request. I'm going to say, hey, host B, guess what? I want to synchronize with you, and I want to build a three-way handshake with you as well. Now, if port 80 on host B is closed, or it's filtered for whatever reason, what's the response back from host B? Now, if you're saying, Andrew, host B is going to send back a reset packet. And in that reset packet, is basically what we say. There's basically a fragment ID. So in traditional networks now, in IPv4 networks, host B, if host B has a port that's closed, he's going to send a reset back to us, and he's going to say, look, I don't have that port open. I don't want to connect with you. I don't know what you're talking about. So he's going to send a reset back to us. Now, let's just say, for example, I'm the attacker out here. I'm going to use the color red. And I've got a source IP address of 109. I'm going to send a what I call a TCP SYN ACK to host C. And that SYN ACK, he's going to receive it and he's going to say, what? I don't have any request with you. I haven't requested any connection with you. What are you talking about? And what he's going to do then is going to respond back with obviously a reset, not a TCP request or an acknowledgement. He's going to send a reset back to us, and he's going to say, you know what, I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. I don't have any connections with you whatsoever. I'm going to block this port off. I'm going to basically terminate our session together. And what actually happens in here in traditional IPv4 networks, guys, we have what we call a fragment ID. And basically every network or every sort of packet that goes in and out of a network now has a specific fragment ID. And the beauty of this is, if you're thinking, well, what am I going to do with that fragment ID? It's just a bit of numbers, or it's a bit of, it's just a bit of information, right? Well, you're right, it is information, but that information can be used for great things. And I'm going to show you what we can do with the fragment ID right now, and how to basically spoof and go on undetected in networks. So once we send that request out to host C, he's going to respond back with a reset message. And that's exactly what we want him to do. We want him to respond back to us. And inside that packet, inside that reset packet that he sends back to us, is going to have a fragment ID. And, depending on what random number it's going to be, let's just say it's going to be, 209. We don't know what the packet's going to be, but it's going to be a reset of, a fragment ID of some sort of packet. And in this case, it's 209. So let's just work with 209, right? So he's going to send that back to us, and he's going to say, look, I don't have any connections with you. I'm just going to close this port off, and, better luck next time, sort of a thing. And that's basically step one. So step one was, basically find and probe the zombie. And that's what we've just done now. So we've probed host C. Now, let's just say that we basically want to attack host A. And host A is our victim, and he's our target that we want to basically scan, and we want to get more information from. And we've got some sensitive information out of host A that we think he can be a viable source for that sort of information, and we want to attack him, right? So what would happen now is simple, right? So we can say host C will send out some packets to host A. So this is step two now, is what we're saying. We send the spoof packets out to this target victim. So let's just say this IP address is, what we're going to do is, he's going to send out a piece of packet out that's going to say TCP SYN ACK. It's going to say, hey, Mr. Host A, I want to connect with you. And that's basically going to come out of, I guess, what we call our source port. So he's going to have his own source request that's going to come out. And that's going to be source port, obviously, .22. And it's going to have a destination IP address of .20. Obviously not .20, it's going to have the full network there, but I'm just using the last bits of the network there just to simplify it. And, if host A has that available, he's going to obviously acknowledge that request, or he's going to say, you know what, Mr. Host B or Host C, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any connections with you whatsoever. I'm not connecting with you because I don't have any acknowledgement requests with you. I'm just going to close this connection off. I don't know who you are and why you're connecting with me. And that's exactly what we want him to do, is send that request back to that host. And inside that request, guys, is what? Is our other fragment ID, right? So he sent a request out. He's responded back saying, you know what? I don't know what you're talking about. Now, depending on, I guess, if we're using sequential or incremental numbering on these networks, depending on what operating system it is, and just to make it simple for this video is, if that packet that comes back is, say, 210 in that fragment ID, then we know that we've got some information. Now, the funny thing here is we've just spoofed the packet. So we've sent host A. We don't know if those ports are open or not, but he's responded back saying, you know what, I don't care about you. I'm closing that connection off. So he's basically terminating that session. Now, what we want to do in the third final step is we want to probe that guy one more time. And I'll tell you why in just a second. If we probe that attacker one more time, and let's just say we send out I'm just going to change colors here and use a nice purple color. Now, if we probe this host C again, I'm going to send him another request. I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Host C, guess what? I want to connect with you on port 80 again. Whoa, what's happened there? And I want to connect with you, and I've acknowledged that connection on port 80. He's going to send a reset back to me and say, you know what? You're crazy. I don't have any connections with you, mate. Sorry, I'm closing the port off. So he's going to send a reset packet back to me, and he's going to say, yep, not happening under my rules. But the awesome thing is with that with that return of traffic, or that reset packet that he sent us, is basically that fragment ID that we wanted. Now, let's just say that this fragment ID that comes back is 211. So that was 209, that was 10, and this is 11. Now, what we can distinguish from this is 209 came out, we didn't see 208, and 210 comes back, for example. Is that right? 209, 210, 211. 211. So this can mean that request of that port, funny thing about that is if 208, 209 comes out and we've got an incremental numbering of 2, so let's just say we have an incremental number of 2 or 1, 2 would indicate that port is well and absolutely open. So we know that port 80 is open on that attacker or on that target host that we want to attack. If it comes back with an incremental numbering of 1, if we did say that packet come back as 210, then that port is probably closed, or I guess it's being filtered out, so it's not responding to any requests. And that's how we basically scan in the real world. That's basically a glimpse of how we would scan a production network without being detected. We don't want to scan with our source IP address of 109 in this network, because that's going to send out a request out to this guy. That's going to be noisy. So what we essentially want to do, there's so many lines here, I'm getting confused just going through this. I'm going to clear this up one more time just very, very quickly. So that 109 address is going to come out. That's rowdy. We don't want that to happen, because that's basically our own source IP address, and that's pretty bad, because that's our connection and that's our system. So we don't want that to happen. What we want to do is basically probe this guy, host C or host B or host D, or maybe all three of them, and we can start probing the attacker from there and start sending all those packets out. Now, as those hosts come back to us and say, look, host A and host D, he might respond back to these guys and say, look, I don't have any of these ports open. He's going to send back these fragment IDs into that network, and based on a sequential number or incremental number of 2 or an incremental number of 1, we indicate that obviously that port, port 80 is open and it's alive and well, and then we can have access to that system through that way, or it's basically closed out and it's being filtered. Now, in normal networks, there's ways to automate things. We can do an entire ping sweep of networks, or do basically a Smurf attack. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later on in this series as well. So that's basically it. That's how we scan in the real world. If you have any feedback or any comments, I'd love to know about it. I'd love to hear them. Let me know how you found this video, and if there's any other sort of information you wanted, love to reach out and let me know. Guys, we'll see you guys again very soon, and I hope and I love all the feedback that I've been receiving, and I will be continuing to make more videos. And in our next video, we're going to talk more about the TCP handshake and how to intercept packets and break them, and send out other requests that are in the normal traditional sense of networks as well, and see how the packets and devices handle those requests. And I'll show you how to intercept the traffic and sort of manipulate the data as well. Guys, this has been fun. It's been super fun for me. I think it's been super fun for you as well, learning how to scan in the real world. Guys, I'll see you guys on the next episode. Enjoy, and we'll talk again very, very soon. Guys, take care.